This is episode 127
of the American Fork Podcast.
Ready, go.
Okay.
To cool it off a little before we get into Vaughn.
Okay.
Robert Downey Jr.
Hey.
is playing Dr. Doom in the new Avengers sequel.
What?
And Jonathan Mayers, if you'll remember. You remember that guy?
No.
Have you watched any of the new Marvel things?
No.
Then you wouldn't know. But essentially the next Thanos was going to be this guy played by this guy, Jonathan Mayers, and apparently he was beating up his girlfriend or something, and so Disney cut him, and now they're bringing back Robert Downey Jr. again.
Wow.
So for the next...
He has got to be getting paid so much money.
As Dr. Doom?
As Dr. Doom is like totally out of left field.
Is he so CGI'd as a character that you don't know it's
I think he wears
Robert
a
Downey?
mask, actually.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
The character, so...
Why would they use the most famous event of the most
Why would they
famous
be
Marvel character to play a different Marvel character?
Yeah, it was pretty bizarre.
Who's the highest on this payroll? Yeah, let's get him to do it. Not some
And
new
we're
guy.
around.
Who's
that
the
we
most
just-
recognized one?
Yeah.
Who everyone associates with Iron Man? Who
Yeah.
is that? Let's have him play Dr. Doom.
Yeah, it really actually seems like a corporate panic. Like a panic move. Because it's the guy we were putting everything behind, strategizing all our movies around this guy, but now we can't have him because he's a woman hitter. And what do we do? What do we do? Oh, let's do what's safe. Let's get Robert Downey back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's there's no one
$600
else.
million. That's fine. I don't know.
Have Hugh Jackman do it. He's still popular, but
Yeah, do Hugh.
Yeah, well, Hugh Jackman is back in the latest
yeah.
Deadpool movie. Did you
Okay,
guys see
So
it?
yeah.
No. I want to see it
I heard it
badly.
I heard it was the
You
worst
heard it
of
was bad?
the worst
Jake,
of
and
the
he
three
turned it down.
Deadpools.
Oh, he turned it down?
I heard Jake turned it down.
Oh yeah, Jake.
Didn't want to go see Deadpool?
I heard
Yeah.
it was the
No,
worst
to
of the
play
three
it.
Deadpools, but I haven't seen the other Deadpools. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
I started to watch the first one over the weekend actually.
Oh,
I
did
fell
ya?
asleep. Yeah.
They're really
started.
good.
You fell asleep
I was
in
really tired.
Deadpool.
Yeah, in Deadpool.
Okay.
But it was good. I do want to watch it again.
They're
I
so
just
funny.
could not keep my eyeballs open.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds is hilarious.
Well, thanks for
Ryan
staying
Reynolds
awake
is pretty
here.
good. Yeah.
Appreciate you
Yeah.
still
That's what I'm
being
here
awake.
for,
in the-
guys.
Yeah. Amber's great. She's a mother and a friend.
But
Thanks. Oh.
she thinks
Both
cilantro
of them.
tastes like
But-
soap.
Yeah, I'm not. Do you like cilantro, Vaughn?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm the only one.
We were just laughing last
You
week.
don't?
No, it tastes terrible.
Well, it tastes like soap,
Yes,
but it's an acquired taste. It's awesome.
it's an acquired.
Wait.
taste.
See, you just have
How
to
do you
keep
acquire
eating
this
soap.
taste? Do you just take soap slivers? And
I'll tell you what it was.
You gotta
When
use
you were
the-
a kid and you swore you didn't get your mouth washed out with soap.
it was cilantro.
Yeah,
Okay,
you didn't get used to it.
You didn't acquire the taste by swearing too
it's
much.
Yeah.
PTSD now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was weird.
RDJ.
Robert Downey is back already.
Wow.
So we'll see. Anyway, on to Vaughn Cook. Vaughn is like we said, a congressional candidate for Utah's 4th district.
Oh, right.
In case you guys didn't know what the 4th district was, which I didn't until I looked it up, it's this guy right here in the middle of the state, which includes Sandy, Provo and Orem, all the way down into Sanpete County, like Manti and everything.
No Provo or Orem.
Oh, excuse me. Provo is a different district.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's actually
It's the west
like
and
half-
south side of Utah County.
it cuts right through Spanish Fort, kind of, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So kind of
Well,
the south half of Spanish Fort,
No, Springville.
Springville. So north of Springville is not in your district, or is.
Well, if you know the streets down there, 400 South in Springville is the dividing line.
Okay.
North of that essentially is District 3. South is District 4.
There we go. I got a better map up there. So this is a little bit closer here. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I hadn't realized before, but congressional districts are pretty difficult to track. And I know that there's been some complaint about gerrymandering, which is the idea that you're drawing the lines to benefit one political party or another.
Mhm.
And you also have to include each congressional district represents roughly, or on average, 700,000 people.
Is that right?
They can be
Wow.
as little as roughly 500,000, and one of them's almost 1 million, but on average they're about 700,000. And so, how do you draw those lines to like?
Yeah, redistricting is a big deal.
Yeah,
Like it's not just you don't just have a few people in a room that are like, let's add the doTERRA building and all the executives in our,
Who,
it's a process.
who decides that? Like, what process is there to establish that?
that's decided by Congress, isn't it?
No, that's decided by our state legislature.
The
okay.
state of Utah does it.
Yeah, so
The
every-
state.
Every 10 years after they do the census, then they redraw the lines to balance them. And what happened this year or this time, it was in 2008, there was a ballot initiative that said, we want an independent redistricting commission. And that passed. And after it passed, then the legislature, which is in this state is supermajority Republican, obviously, they kind of neutered that and said, okay, you can advise us, but we don't have to do what you say. And then eventually what they did is they took the whole process away from this districting commission, and some of the state legislators went into closed door session and drew the map.
Mm.
And then there was a lawsuit, and that lawsuit took about 3 years to get up to the Supreme Court, and they just ruled recently, and they ruled in favor of the plaintiff, which were the Better Boundaries and the Mormon Women for Ethical Government and some individuals.
So in favor of the independent,
In favor of basically what they said is, legislators, you cannot do whatever you want to do. If you get a ballot initiative and it says this is what the voters want to do, you have to do that. And that was, I think, the essence of the lawsuit, even though I'm not very eloquent of talking about it.
That's interesting,
That was
though. That's, yeah.
No, and yeah, and that's why I am just confused, because if you look here, you can see where all 4 districts kind of come together in a point here.
Yeah.
Like this is Provo's, this is the 4th district, and I can't remember which of these is which, but
The one that's on 3900 South and 9th East, that intersection is Four Corners.
4 corners, they all meet right there. So there's like a corner that goes out in each direction.
Yeah.
Kind of southwest, southeast, northwest, northeast,
So
roughly.
So generally speaking, with the 4th district, which is your district, right? What parts of, like, what areas roughly in Salt Lake County would you be representing?
Basically everything west of I-15 and south of 3900 South.
Okay.
So like Taylorsville, where we are now,
Yeah,
is
we're
in
in
your
the 4th
district.
district. Yeah.
Yeah.
When,
Oh, okay.
when you get to
American Fork.
7200 South, you go east to 9th East and then up to 39th South.
Yeah.
South,
Okay.
so-
Yeah, it kind of splits right. Is this I-15 right here? This?
yes.
It must be.
Yeah.
So it kind of split on I-15 from like Taylorsville all the way down to American Fork, actually. And then,
Takes in a little bit of American Fork.
yeah, but right kind of in the middle of American Fork, it juts directly south into the lake. So anything east of that is in the Proville district. Anything west, like Saratoga, is in your district there.
That's right.
So,
I am just literally like 3 blocks outside your district.
yeah,
Oh.
Dang it.
imagine that.
Fair
I'm
getting a
outside of your
houseboat.
district, but I own property in your district. Imagine that.
You mean you guys can't vote for me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
I'm out
leaving.
here, yeah.
I'm
yeah.
leaving.
Exactly.
I'm in Pleasant Grove. It's a
No, I'm-
different district.
No, but Trent,
That
the
is
owner of
great.
the house, the person who should be here right now, but he's too busy,
He can.
he can vote for you.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
So-
I'm going to get a houseboat and put it on Utah Lake.
Yeah.
There you go.
and there'll be my permanent
So
address.
that's 2 votes
My
for you,
voting
Vaughn.
address.
Yeah.
It won't float very far.
Well, when they redrew these lines, there are computer modeling tools
Yeah.
that they use to do it, and the argument against gerrymandering is basically it's politicians choosing the voters as opposed to the
Right.
voters choosing the politicians.
Right.
In the 4th district, the area that's the 4th district was approximately plus 13 Republican before the redistricting. It's now plus 37.
Wow.
Oh wow!
So
and
what does
that's
that mean?
just from people moving and things like that.
No,
since-
it's because they draw the lines in a way that it takes in.
Oh, you're saying they redrew the lines to now be plus 37.
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's kind of like, well, an easy way to understand that is if you're going to go play golf with your friend, and back in the olden days, he had a 13 handicap.
Mm-hmm.
So you can beat him by 12 strokes and he still wins. Well, now he has a 37 stroke handicap. So,
Right.
so any non-Republican coming into the race has a more serious challenge because you're starting without that
A
handicap.
bigger disadvantage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What about someone just cutting out the shape of the United States and then overlaying just a straight up grid with little squares over it? Not just blindfold like this, stick it on there, and then wherever those squares land, those are the districts for that year.
Can I choose a district that I would represent?
Yeah.
It's from Tooele to Wendover.
Yeah.
That whole
That's the one that
you
you
have
would
a
do.
thousand. You have 1,000 citizens.
Well, and because I'm saying that because right now, obviously, they're trying to like represent a specific amount of people. But what about the idea that you're representing like people in a geography?
Yeah.
Does that make any more sense than like,
Well, that's one argument. One
Yeah.
argument would be let's not divide any city.
right,
So, for example, in the 4th District, part of Mill Creek
right,
is in the district, but not all of it.
right,
Part of Draper is in it. Part of Sandy is in it. Part of Murray is in it.
American
Part
Fork.
of Millville is in it. Midvale.
yeah.
So there's just lots of parts of cities.
yeah,
And one argument could be, wouldn't it be better if our Congress people worked with cities uniquely so that, okay, if I'm working with
Right.
Midvale is my responsibility
Yeah.
back in Washington.
yeah, not just
Not,
west of 1,000 west. And then
Yeah.
everything east of that is, it's
Or even county stuff. I mean,
exactly.
if you honed it into some established boundary, it seems like it would make more sense because that's already somewhat of an established quote unquote group. Like the people in American Fork or Utah County, like they have very similar issues, obviously different issues throughout the whole county, but they're a bit more of a group than slicing up cities this side of the railroad tracks or that side,
Mhm.
It's interesting.
Well, and the complaint would be like, I think maybe like the complaint of a Republican in California is that their vote just doesn't matter, right? They can go vote in the general election, but it doesn't matter because they're so overweight or
well,
whatever.
they get gerrymandered by the Democrats.
Right,
This is not a unique problem to Utah.
right.
They didn't invent that word for Utah. That's
Yeah.
for
Right.
probably every state, frankly.
Yeah.
Does it?
And probably more equal in certain places, battling back and forth to gerrymander in favor of their own group. But yeah,
And is this a power that should remain with states, or do you think the federal government should say everyone needs to do it this way? Like come up
No,
with a
no.
more fair way? Or
I think it should stay with the states.
yeah,
Yeah, because it really is we're representing people in a state,
right.
and I think state legislators have a better pulse on that than somebody in Washington would.
Well, and I just
Yeah.
say that because it seems like some states in a general election have like they go by like the majority or the where other states. How am I saying that wrong? Like their delegates. There's certain states where it's like they count every delegate and report every delegate, but in other states it's like winner takes all type thing. Like whoever
Oh, yeah.
once they get to a majority, all the delegates have to vote that way
You're talking about the presidential
for a presidential election.
Yeah.
So a little bit different, but for me that seems unfair. Like when I go to vote, and obviously, like you said, each state has their own rights or everything. But does that infringe on one person's right a little bit? If I go and vote, and I'm like, and my vote counts in my state, and those delegates are all counted, but in this other state, maybe my brother lives over there, he votes the same way. but because his state is a winner takes all, like his whole town, his whole county, his whole corner of the state could vote one way, and it doesn't matter.
wouldn't matter.
Like it's just kind of swallowed up.
But I think that's a unique situation for the presidential election, right? In the electoral college, or is it similar with other like
Election?
for when it comes to voting for District 4, is it majority wins the office or
Yeah, whoever gets the most votes wins.
just
Yeah.
period? Like there's
Yeah.
no
Because there's no
weird stuff
delegates or
between.
yeah,
No delegates involved in that.
yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. That
And-
makes more sense to me.
And that's going to happen on election day. The same when people go to vote on their ballot for the president.
Right. You vote for one.
Yeah.
And it's just a winner take all for the most part. That's how our ballot's structured. There are arguments for different voting systems. One that I like is called approval voting. And that is you go in and vote for everybody you approve of. So you might look at the presidential, slate of candidates, and you might say, okay, I like Trump and I like RFK, but I don't like anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, Trump would get a vote and RFK would get a vote.
Yeah.
And whoever gets the most votes wins.
Yeah.
But you have a chance to vote for anybody you approve of. And that's a more democratic way to
Yeah.
select our leaders, really.
Plus, that would like handle so many awkward conversations. Like, who did you vote for? You know what I mean? You could just be like, "Well,
Everybody.
I chose everyone,"
Well,
or "I just didn't vote for that person."
I chose everyone but one.
you'd say, who did you approve of?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Who do you like?
There you go.
I like these guys. That's an interesting system. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, it's actually getting a foothold here in Utah. There's
Yeah.
another way of voting that's kind of getting a foothold, and that's called ranked choice.
See, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you say,
The-
"This is my first choice. This is
Right.
my second choice. This is my third choice." Right.
And the challenge with that is, in order to implement that, you have to change the mechanisms of the voting system. So it's more complicated. It's a little harder to understand, and it's more expensive.
And to my understanding, Abraham Lincoln wouldn't have been elected under ranked choice.
I don't know.
Yeah,
don't know.
I've heard that.
He wasn't rank enough.
He wasn't rank enough. I think, and that's the problem I foresee is we could get in a situation where there's a really good candidate, and for some reason, half the country hates him, hates their guts, and
That's like it is now.
Yeah, exactly.
50-50.
Exactly. Really split. And that's actually what I wanted to get into, because you mentioned or I think it was mentioned on your website. In fact, I should pull it up here. There's a good little quote that was saying that here it is right on top. Political parties are now running the government rather than people. In quotes, in big fat letters right on top. What do you mean by that?
Well, let's look at the presidential election. How many Democrats had the opportunity to choose their candidate democratically?
And you're talking about Kamala.
No,
No,
I'm talking about Biden.
Biden.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if they had a legitimate primary, I doubt Biden would have made it past the primary. He
Right.
would have lost to somebody younger probably back then.
And you're talking about the 2024 election.
The
Well,
20,
just as an example,
and
the
Uh-huh,
2024 election.
Because even when you said that, I'm thinking also, and I've talked about this before, the 2020 election, because I felt like even though Biden performed by far the worst in all his debates, in all the primaries in that election, for some reason they kept putting him in the middle, and he all of a sudden he lost like the first 5 states, was last place, and then all of a sudden started winning like crazy. To me, I was like, something weird's going on here. Like,
Well, what happened in that case is Biden had a black senator, a black congressman who got behind him.
oh,
And that brought the black vote. And when the black vote got behind Biden, his momentum was waning,
yeah,
but that
changed everything.
It changed the momentum. And when the momentum changed, it's kind of like what's happened with Kamala now.
Yeah,
Biden was probably sliding, and
Yeah.
we just got a new face, a younger face, and all of a sudden
Like,
instead of 37% of the Democrats being excited about their candidate, 81% of them are.
yeah.
Right.
And so she's unstoppable because she's got the momentum.
Yeah.
And that's really what happened with Biden.
Yeah. Well, and that makes a lot more sense. But anyway, you were saying on the 2024 election, there's no real primary this time.
Well, the political parties become the power brokers, and have become the power brokers. And so you'll get a candidate well, let's go to Congress for an example. In Congress, in fact, I'm going to divert from what we're saying here because I think it'll come back to
that's
it.
fine.
In Congress, there are 429 voting members. And so in order to have a majority in the House, you have to have 215 seats. And so the goal for these political parties is to have at least that many or more, because if you have that many, if you vote as a block, you can control what the legislature does.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to select the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House is really a powerful position because that person controls the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember when the Senate sent this bipartisan immigration bill down to the House, and Trump called Mark Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, and said,
Don't do it.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Mike
Well,
Johnson.
Is it Mike?
Yeah.
So all he had to do is say, okay, I'm holding the bill. I'm not going to put it, I'm not going to put it into the House. And so it was dead before it got started. So that position is a powerful position, and you want to be able to elect that person. So the parties then push to make sure they get their majority. And what I would like to see is no party have the majority.
Mm-hmm.
If we could push the Republicans back and the Democrats, the Republicans control it now. They have 217. The Democrats have 212. But if you could push that back so nobody has the majority, then what happens is you take the power away from the extreme edges of both parties,
Mm-hmm.
and you move it into the middle. And most legislators, most Congress people are moderates. They reside in the middle.
Yeah. It's just like, I feel like just like the American people. Like,
Yes.
social media and whatnot tries to throw a wedge to, like, somehow I'm all of a sudden like this super right-wing person. But the truth is, when I sit and talk to anybody, like, we have so much in common that's all in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. It's just so crazy. Like, I can say I enjoy shooting guns, and all of a sudden, like, I'm some right-wing extremist, and I'm like, I don't know where that came from, but it's an artificial wedge, I feel like.
Because you're easy to market to when you have a, blue or red label on you.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to
You're
pit.
easy to sway.
You can pit people against each other.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. I've never really heard that about Congress too, which I guarantee I know that's true.
Well,
without even knowing it, it makes so much sense to me. That's got to be true.
well, and let me ask you this. You said there's how many? 421?
429.
29. And so 429, let's say it's perfectly in half, so it's roughly like 215, 214
majority.
per party. Or what is the majority? Is it
215 is
215
majority.
is
215 is the majority.
Majority by one.
By
So
one.
in theory, if you inject a third party, you only have to take half of that from each. Is that right?
Well, if in today's situation, if the Democrats stayed where they were
Uh-huh.
and the Republicans lost 3 seats to independent or third-party candidates,
hmm
it would happen.
Oh, really? All
three-
that needs to happen
3 seats would do it.
to break the stalemate in Congress is 3 Republican seats need to move independent.
Right.
But because right now Republicans have the majority, Democrats are the minority. So all that needs to happen is 3 Republican seats lean independent or swing independent, and we now have a Congress that has to function because nobody's in control.
Well, what would happen is those 3 independents would make a decision. I'm in a caucus with the Republicans, or I'm in a caucus with the Democrats.
Like Bernie Sanders.
More than likely, yeah.
Right.
Bernie is independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats. The difference is, however, let's assume that I get back in Congress. And let's say I say, okay, I'm going to caucus with the Republicans because I do come from a Republican-dominated state. But I have no obligation to vote with them every time.
Right.
My only obligation would be to the people in the 4th District. And if the Republicans said, hey, let's spend a bunch of money and impeach the president, and I said, I'm not going to vote for that because I'm not going to waste our time and our money doing something that's just stupid to make a political statement.
Yeah.
So I'm not obligated to follow the party line, even though I might say, I'm going to caucus with you guys.
Yeah.
So that's the advantage that independents have. Now, right now, see, if you look at the composition, you've got 217 Republicans. What does that mean? It means that they've got a margin of 3 if they want to vote, if they want to get their votes passed.
Right.
And when you do that, you then give members of your own party who have more extreme political views, you give them the ability to blackmail the rest of the party.
Right.
And we see that. When Mike Johnson was wanting to be the Speaker of the House, and he was soliciting the votes of the Republicans because it was highly unlikely any Democrat was going to vote for him, some of these ultra-conservative Republicans said, we're not going to vote for you unless you agree to, and then they gave him an agenda of some rather extreme demands, and he said, okay. And then they voted for him, and that's how he got his job. Well, now if he steps out of line, these guys have a tremendous amount of authority to pull him out of office just because they don't like what he did. That was one of their demands. So if you push that majority position so that there is no majority position, then you give the power to the middle. And we would find, I would think, in more instances, and I'm sure it happens a lot, but we would see cross-party cooperation.
Right.
And if you wanted to do something that took a majority of the vote, you would have to look outside your party to get the vote.
And it seems too that, like you're saying now, that the edges, the extreme left, extreme right, these people in Congress have power now because of the way it's set up. It seems if there was a middle ground or more middle ground, those people would actually drop off and lose a lot of power. Like they would be looked at as for what they are, which is the extremes. And I think people would be like, okay, we can settle a little more into the middle now instead of like appeasing these edges.
You would force that to happen. So right now, if I'm a Republican in Congress, and the party says we're going to vote this way and we're going to hold the line, and I say I don't agree, and I vote against the party, now I'm a traitor to the party,
right?
And I really irritate any of the Republican operatives back here in Utah. And what do? They say, well, this guy's a skunk. We're not going to reelect him. And we're going to make his life miserable in the meantime because I'm a traitor. But if you didn't have the majority and you had to look outside of your party,
you have to be quote unquote friendly to that person.
Yeah, then let's say I'm the Republican and I don't vote with the Republicans, or I compromise and do something else. The answer is I didn't bail on the party. Because if you don't compromise, we don't get anything done. If we don't reach across the aisle and talk to people who might think differently than we do, nothing happens. So do you want me to go back there and just be a bump on a log and have nothing happen? Or would you like me to work with people back there? So by making it the rule instead of the exception, you take away the incentive to punish legislators. And because I believe that most of the people in Washington in Congress are, to a greater or lesser degree, they're moderates. My definition of a moderate is somebody who will listen respectfully to the opinions of others and won't assume that you're the smartest person in the room and all of your ideas are good and everybody else's are evil. That's basically what moderate means. And I think most legislators fit that model.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't think we mentioned you're running in the United Party?
United Utah Party.
United Utah Party, which is a Utah-specific party?
It is.
Okay. And so, 'cause there are actually a lot of parties, if you look at it. So that makes you, in our political realm, that makes you independent, right?
Well, essentially, it's called a third party. So I'm a third party candidate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, you'd be, in theory, if you're not a Republican, you're not a Democrat, you're
a third
independent
party.
or
Yeah.
a third party.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about this. And the thing that came to mind most recently, where I really saw this work, at least to my perspective, was with Joe Manchin, if you remember, was the senator. So Biden gets into office and he's like, we're going to make this huge new deal with infrastructure and everything. We're going to spend $3 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, Joe Manchin was a Democrat at the time, but held up his whole party. And he made him bring the price down, and he made him bring it down again and again. And I think he whittled it clear down to like $400 billion or something, which is still a lot of money to spend. But
All the way
it's
down
like-
to there?
Yeah. But can you
Wow.
imagine what inflation would have been had we spent $3 trillion as opposed to $400 billion or whatever it was? Like that's like
Yeah,
ginormous.
It's amazing.
And I think Joe Manchin has since declared his
He's retiring.
independence. Oh, he is retiring.
Yeah.
I thought he left the party, or he declared that he's an independent now, but is also retiring.
I'm
Like,
almost certain he's retiring. But
Oh.
he was elected in a right-leaning state.
right. So he kind of had to pander to them.
Well, yeah, he was representing the people who elected him.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were not, liberal Democrats, let's spend all the money.
Right.
They were more conservative, and so
Right.
he was doing a job of representing them.
He was doing what he was supposed to do,
Yeah.
is what it sounds like.
When
Yeah.
did we transition from our state representatives representing the states or the district to representing the party?
Well, I don't know that that's entirely true, but what happens is the parties have so much control over the election process. So if you are a Republican in Utah, well, let's go back. Two election cycles, or when Ben McAdams was the
Mayor?
congressman, when he was the congressman, and Burgess Owens competed with him.
Mhm.
Both of those candidates spent over $5.5 million on that campaign.
Mhm.
A good percentage of that money came from the Democratic and the Republican Party.
Right.
And so when you go back to Washington as a representative who is a member of one of those two parties, one of your responsibilities is to spend a fair amount of time in the call center raising money for the party,
Mm-hmm.
because they're building the war chest for the next time somebody's in a tight race like that and control of the House is in the balance,
Right.
then they spend a lot of money. Well, if I'm in a race where I have a big brother who's going to come in and dump millions of dollars into my race, and then I win, am I going to be holding to that,
Right.
donor? And the answer is absolutely.
If it weren't for them, yeah.
Yeah, it's the party that got me elected
Mhm.
more than the people who voted for him,
Right.
Yeah.
And probably will help you stay in office.
as long as you vote the party line.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the parties have become too important,
Mhm.
but that's not going to change until we can move the majority away from both parties and force solutions to problems that are not perpetuated by the dysfunction that exists in Washington now.
Yeah.
I would imagine one of the major benefits to what you're just saying is whittling bills down in things like cost, or taking out, what do they call it, earmarks, or spending on things that are not related to the bills. It would put a focus on what the bill is actually about, as opposed to, because right now, if you have a handful of Republican senators or congressmen who sponsor a bill and it's popular enough, the chances of it getting passed is pretty high, regardless of what's in it. Right. So I would imagine that doing what you're saying, taking the majority away from both parties would hopefully alleviate that pork spending and all of the other unrelated things and bills that just annoy people.
I think it opens up the possibility that would happen. If you look at society and you look at democracy, you've heard that democracy is an experiment. Well, it is an experiment, and that means that we're probably not going to get it right ever, but we're going to do the best job we can, knowing that the good things that we think we're doing downstream are going to create some collateral damage. And so downstream, we have to reevaluate and we have to tweak and we try to make things better again. But in the process of implementing solutions, we create systems and people become entrenched in those systems. And as dysfunction becomes apparent, you can't change the system unless you control the decision makers, unless the decision makers are free to do it. So let's say you wanted to change election finance. There's no incentive to change election finance today because the system that uses the way it's built perpetuates the demand for the way it's built.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But there is a better way to do election financing. The only way to do that is to, again, you have to take the majority away from both parties so that now you can open up a dialogue where people can say, well, let's try something different.
Yeah.
Let's not just make politics all about money.
Yeah.
And when you talk about this money in politics, doesn't this all largely stem from, I think it was a 2012 Supreme Court decision where they essentially said that that money is speech. So like that a corporation can...
I think it was in 2010. It was called Citizens Unite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Essentially saying a company can express their free speech by injecting as much money as they want into Donald Trump's campaign or Kamala Harris's or whatever. And I think the outcry to that or the pushback to that was like, whoa, now you're essentially, people can just buy elections. I mean, just whoever spends the most money wins type thing. Like, does it make any, obviously the Supreme Court can rule however they determine, but then legislation can be enacted to potentially overrule that or come up with a better system that makes more sense. Like shouldn't everyone have the same voice? And how do you do that without like?
Is that true though? That like statistically, you spent more money, you win.
Well, I don't know if it is.
I'm just
true.
curious.
I know it is last time. I know Biden outspent Trump and he won.
I think Hillary outspent Trump by like 3-1 or something like that.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay.
I think
so. It's not always a 1-for-1 situation.
No.
But I can see. I mean, I'm not just talking presidential. I'm talking through districts and mayors,
local
and
races.
you know what I mean? Like what school board, like class president.
You can say though that all the money is in those two parties, and then independent candidates have a paling comparison, and also don't get nearly the showing. We should have. Why not have just as many independents as we do? Like, why isn't it a third and a third and a third?
I thought that too.
You know what I mean? Because there's got to be at least that many people that. But it just seems like everyone always shifts Republican or Democrat or
in Utah, that speaks well for the Republicans.
Yeah.
I mean, the Republicans are in the position they are in Utah because over the years, they've convinced us that Republican and righteous are synonyms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a good person and you don't know the candidate, it's
Vote
always safe to
Republican.
vote for the Republican. And so that's
they're going to be against abortion.
Wait, so you're
we're
saying
safe.
that's not right?
No,
Wait a minute.
Wait.
Republicans aren't right?
Well, and again, I don't think we can be too critical of the Republicans because they've done a good job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just
in
that's
certain
the way it
settings.
is.
Yeah. In Utah, I mean, I love
Utah's great.
Utah
right?
has done incredible with certain things. The fact that we have a surplus and a rainy day fund, I think we're one of the few states that even can talk about that, right? I don't know if we still do have a rainy day fund after COVID and stuff, but I think most states are hurting, and Utah is talking about having additional money. That's weird.
I don't know.
Is
that true? Do we have money?
I think they call it a rainy day fund, don't they?
Oh.
Utah State?
They have a big budget. I think Utah's state government is run well.
Yeah.
I think that it would be run better if it was not supermajority one party.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it opens us up to abuses of power.
It does.
And I think that's unfortunate. And it really, the demographics of the legislature probably don't match entirely the demographics of the state. I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I think absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just has a tendency to do that.
So you're running against Burgess Owens and John Curtis?
No, John's running for the Senate.
Oh, okay.
So there are 3 candidates in the 4th district. I'm one of them. The Democrat is
Katrina
Katie
Fallett Wayne,
Uh-huh.
and M. Evan Ballard is the unaffiliated.
I didn't know there was one there,
Oh,
unaffiliated.
that's just according to Ballotpedia, which was a website I just discovered.
Okay.
So,
And then the Republican is Burgess, who's the incumbent.
Oh, okay.
So he's
Right.
currently
and he's the one that's a
in-
football player.
That's correct.
Yeah.
He's got
Okay.
he's an elite athlete.
what's his last name? Owens.
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 So
Yep.
you're in as a third party.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I guess the real question is, if voters turn away from this guy Owens, which is really turning away from the righteous party of Utah,
Jeez.
what can they expect? Like, what can you promise voters
Well,
in your district?
I think the difference is that I'm not obligated to either of the major parties.
Right.
My only obligation will be to the voters of the 4th district.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'll vote. I'll vote to represent them.
Yeah.
And if the Joe Manchin situation shows up, well, then that's how I'm going to move.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating because when I first was learning about you when you're coming on, I was like, oh, this will be a lot of fun. And then when you came in and dropped that hammer about 3 independents completely changing our political landscape, I was like, holy cow, you could be one of 3 people that change how America works.
Well, and if Utah caught that vision
Yeah.
and we send 4 Congress people back who are of the same bent,
Right.
now
Right.
now Utah wields an inordinate amount of power.
Utah could control this country.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
our influence would be felt in more significant ways than it has been for years.
Yeah.
Bring Deseret back, man.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Desert Rat. Start printing those coins again.
Heck yeah.
Well, we've loved having you on. Is there anything you'd like to say before I spin out?
No, it's been great being here. I
Yeah.
appreciate the invitation, and it's
Yeah,
fun to get
thank you.
know y'all, and
Yeah.
it's always fun to talk about politics.
Yeah, we've enjoyed having you on. I've been fascinated by the things that you've said.
Yes.
Definitely
This is actually why I love having different opinions and ideas, is because literally my eyes, it's like, what did you learn today, Jeff? This is it. That the balance is pretty insane. Like, I've seen it on a social scale, but reflecting that into Congress, that balance of just red tie versus blue tie doesn't have to be that way. And I don't know why I couldn't mock that up in my mind. I couldn't envision that, but like, just talking about it with you today, I'm like, oh yeah, it could be different actually. And that's kind of weird that I never thought of that.
yeah.
But-
That's why Vaughn's here.
And
I know.
and we're
Spread
actually
that
so close to being there. Like I was thinking, like, oh, and because I like the idea of independent candidates. I'm like, oh, but whatever,
Yeah, you're gonna have to get 50 of them in
I'm
there.
gonna
or
vote
something.
for RFK. He's not gonna win. I don't care. I'm voting for him anyway. But this is like a thing where I'm like, wow, this one little change could be a really big change. Anyway.
And I think it is extremely important. I only started doing this the last 3 or 4 times I've voted. Actually go do your research with the people in your district and in your areas, because I think that I had the idea of like red is righteous or whatever, And if I didn't know, I just wrote that way or whatever. But
But you
I'm
could be
shocked.
voting for a really bad candidate.
dude,
I think a
yeah.
lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And
But I
the
think a lot of people
legislative
do.
branch of our government is extremely important. I say probably more important than the president,
Yeah.
Right.
because it's the legislators that make the laws that impact us inside the doors of our homes.
Yeah.
But I would
They spend the money. They declare war. The president's just like the clown.
He's a
They're the
puppet.
ones
Wave to
that they're the
everybody.
ones that impeach the president.
Yeah.
Like-
Impeach the
like that's-
president.
There's a lot of power in the legislative branch, and it's really important that we get to know the candidates. Sorry, Jeff, I
It's okay.
interrupted you.
This
but
isn't my show. It's our show. So I'm willing to share.
I love you
mine,
too, Jeff.
by the way.
But like,
We're third
but
party
really,
here.
I strongly encourage that you research all the way from school district to president. Like, research the people that you're going to have the options of, because my my vote has changed from very red to like red, white, and blue. I mean, for real. I'm not joking. That was really profound, though. Huh?
Good job, Jeff.
I'm sure. Could I do it a little better, a little more poetic, probably? Anyway,
Take two.
it's crazy because I had no idea. I'm like, you know what? I actually read these guys' bios and what they're about and what's going on. I'm like, you know what? This is my guy. Yep, he's Democratic. Yep, he's independent. Yep, he's Republican. Doesn't really matter. It's their message and their philosophy. And I want to thank you because I do like your philosophy and your message.
Yeah. It's
Thank
just
you.
too bad that none of us can vote for you.
I'm
What a
buying a
shame.
We'll
house.
force Trent.
Maybe-
We'll tell Trent.
Yeah, we'll tell
Yeah.
Trent. He'll
good.
vote for
Yeah.
you.
Good.
How long does it take to establish residency?
And our listeners, and we do have a lot of listeners in your district. So
yeah, they do.
There,
We do
yeah.
actually.
so
Yeah, his your website is vaughncook.com. It's spelled VAUGHN. And that's one thing that I like to do is go, if the candidate does not have a website, I won't vote for them.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow, Jake.
Just
Coming
like
from
that.
someone who like
Most
does
of them
website
do.
stuff.
And sometimes it's just like a cheap, like a blog post or something. And I'll comb through that.
yeah,
But I use the candidate's website and ontheissues.org. And ontheissues.org, you can put in any candidate that has any history of political history at all, and they'll tell you what they've said or how they've voted on all of the issues on the table. Everything from crime to economics, family, everything. And, it's really important, I think, that we investigate and research candidates.
love it. Well, if you haven't been following the Olympics, Simone
Oh, yeah.
Biles has been
Injured and still dominating.
murdering the.
She got like the highest score ever.
I don't think so. It was her high score, but she like went out of bounds twice, and she just laughed like, "What a joke! I'm amazing anyway." Like, look at that! Isn't that
Wow.
It's like a
insane?
triple full.
Isn't she like 40? What's
No, she's
no.
26, I think.
Oh, that's right.
26, but
What's
they
wrong with
just
being 40.
the women's team, the U.S. women's team just won gold.
First
And
time
yeah,
in a
she
long
just,
time.
I mean, she looks like
Amazing.
she's made out of
Yeah,
rubber or
exactly.
something.
I can
Like-
say that.
And she has an injured foot again.
Injured
She
her
did last
foot.
year.
Yeah,
really,
Too.
she really is incredible.
she really is. She's like the Michael Phelps or the
She smokes weed?
Michael the Michael John. Like she's the gymnast.
Yeah.
Of this time, of this generation for sure.
Yeah.
So we're just watching her twirl around here on the mat.
The big screen.
Here she goes.
In
She's
her
gonna do
really
her last
expensive uniform.
thing,
They have most
yeah.
expensive uniforms
boom,
ever.
boom.
Jeez.
Perfect.
See, she steps out and she's just like, haha, I won anyway. Because I
You're-
did such a
When-
difficult flip that,
When she did the pole vault, they said all she has to do is land this jump, and she's got the gold.
yeah, she just got to land.
And she's got first place in that in the pole vault
Yeah.
because she was doing so well
Just
up
the
until
vault, I
then.
think.
Yeah, just the vault.
Not the pole vault.
Or the vault. Yeah, right.
The vault.
Exactly,
Yeah.
She's not track and field.
Oh, yeah.
The vault. Not the
You should see her curling
That's
in the
outside.
Winter Olympics. She's really good.
Yeah.
shot
Exactly.
put.
So wait, I'm confused. Are you ending a podcast where he's talking about the Olympics? Because
Yeah.
I can talk for like an hour about the Olympics.
No, I just gonna jet that in there real quick.
Well, thank you, Phil.
yeah,
Go
but it
Amer-
has been good, right? And
Go
synchronized
America. That's what
diving has
Phil's
been
saying.
good. We didn't win that, but China did it incredible.
My wife has brought up like way too much booty cheeks. We talked about booty cheeks last week too.
Yeah, we did
at
talk
the
about
public
booty
pools. But
Oh
like,
yeah.
she's like, these guys, they're not covering their butts.
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
don't think they care. I don't
No,
think
they
it
don't.
matters.
I think most people don't care.
When you've worked your butt off
literally,
to
Literally.
oblivion, and you're up there, I just don't think they care.
Yeah,
They're just like,
no.
I've worked so hard to get here. And
Yeah.
and even some of them have said it's like, once I'm here, it's like, it's over now. I don't care if I win or what. It's like,
You
I
made
worked
it.
so hard. Yeah, and it's like, whatever happens here happens. Like, it's a crazy thing.
And
Yeah.
America is by far the best.
yeah, hands down.
at some
yeah.
things.
America has over 300 medals
Already?
in the history of Olympics.
Oh,
In the history of Olympics.
no, we got a lot more
And-
than that.
It was
Gold
like,
medals?
or it was like 3,000 in the history of all the Olympic. Anyway,
Oh,
I
I,
think
don't know.
Michael
And then the
Phelps
next-
has 300.
yeah, 3,000 or something. I think it's 3,000. And the next highest country has 2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds
every-
about like our military spending.
We should look at that.
Yeah.
Military spending to
Correlate-
gold medals.
correlation.
Yeah.
Gold medals.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for being with us on the American Fork podcast. Check us out on Patreon, Twitter, Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing.
and all those
That
things.
still exists.
We've really enjoyed having you on, Vaughn. Again, we can't vote for you, but hopefully a lot of our listeners are going to look into you, seriously consider you, and hopefully we have a good turnout on an election day, right?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I think we will.
It's gonna be fun.
Me too. So, thanks again.
Hey,
and
bye.
goodbye.
Was in the car, as we said, with President Kennedy. He slumped into her lap, and she is said to be bearing up reasonably well. Stunned, but not in a state of shock as yet, she was seen crying in the corridors of the hospital. Bill Stinson, an assistant to Governor Connolly, says he talked to the governor in the hospital operating room. He says the governor was shot just below the shoulder blade in the back. Stinson said he asked Connolly how it happened, and he said, "I don't know, I guess from the back. They got the president, too." Stinson said that he asked Connolly if there was anything he could do, and Connolly replied, "Just take care of Nellie for me." Nellie is Governor Connolly's wife. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago. Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left the hospital in Dallas, but we do not know to where he has proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking the oath of office shortly and become the 36th President of the United States.